Hello. Hey there, Charles. How are you?
I'm fine, Marie. How are you?
Good, thanks. We're just going to give it a couple more seconds here and let people keep coming in.
I
You
see.
are in the right place if you are looking for the session on how strong is your pipeline.
Indeed. And you found your co-presenters, co-facilitators, right? So here we are.
And here we are. I think we'll kick it off and we'll let people keep entering as we launch into things. We're going to start by doing introductions so you know who your presenters are today. So without further ado, hi everyone, my name is Marie Wiese and I'm the CEO of Marketing Copilot, and I am a recently new Microsoft MVP in AI. And I've been working in the tech sector for about 30 years. I have made a lot of contributions as a volunteer to the tech sector, mostly in Canada. I'm hosting a podcast now called Women Talk Tech, and I've written a few books, and I would love it if you would connect with me on LinkedIn. Charles, introduce yourself.
I will. My story is 25 years plus as a director, producer, and arts executive in the performing arts in Canada. So that means that in that period, I guided over 60 professional shows, if you like, from page to stage, and certainly from coast to coast, and won a few awards on the way. All of that will become relevant when we get into what's happening now, which is StoryBrand. After my what am I going to do with the rest of my life midlife crisis, I decided to first of all become a focal point business coach, and then realized that what I really could do is marry the creative and arts and narrative side of what I had been doing with bringing culture and storytelling into business communications and specifically business marketing. So I've been a certified StoryBrand guide, and we'll talk about StoryBrand a bit more, for 3 years. And indeed, also please connect with me on LinkedIn. Thanks.
So we want to set the stage for today's session. And I think that this is an interesting matchup here between what Marketing Copilot is doing with our growth formula and what Charles is doing in delivering the StoryBrand framework to people. Over the last 24 months, the team at Marketing Copilot had really studied what was going on in the business to business sector, particularly around customer acquisition. How were people finding customers? How were they connecting with customers? How were they keeping customers? And I think we've outlived the sprint that we had there in digital marketing around SEO and pay-per-click. And we're finding that those tactics really aren't doing much anymore for us in the way of quality leads. And so the team at Marketing Copilot wanted to set out and figure out what has really happened in the last couple of years in the sales and marketing space. We talked to a lot of companies and we found out that the cost of sales has dramatically increased. And that seems weird because we all thought getting into the digital age meant that the costs of sales and marketing would go down, but we're finding it's actually gone up significantly. The second thing that we noticed is that we used to be able to do 5 to 7 touches with a prospective buyer to find out their interest level. And now we're getting reports that it's anywhere from 20 to 30, 21 to 30. And that is significant for marketers specifically. And the other thing that we've noted is that buyer demand suggests that techniques from just 5 years ago are no longer working. And I used to sit on panels around this topic. And, a couple of years back, we talked about things like cold calling. Does it still work? And everyone agreed it just didn't. And now we're seeing an onslaught of cold emailing into our inbox or into our LinkedIn accounts. And so we really wanted to unpack what was happening and what was a better way to build customer acquisition and customer loyalty. The stakes today are pretty darn high. Would you not agree, Charles?
Absolutely. More and more so.
The competitive advantage in the marketplace is severely diminished. More time and money and resources are being put into lead generation and lead management. And companies that don't work hard at this simply will not be around in 5 years. These are the table stakes today. You have to get this right. So we really thought that this was an important session to bring everybody together. And I myself have gone through the StoryBrand framework, and I found it unbelievably valuable for my own business in helping figure out the best way to identify buyer problems, how you want to take your buyer through a story and through a journey. And then when you tack on the Marketing Copilot growth formula, which we're going to teach you today, you're going to see that this is very compelling. And I think that the thing we learned the most in the last 24 months is that to increase revenue, there are 5 key ingredients that you really need. A unique and differentiated story or value proposition, and that's what Charles is going to take you today. Documented buyer personas that drive the right content. And again, Charles is going to show you how that's going to work. You need alignment between sales and marketing about revenue goals. And this is often something when we go in to consult with companies that we're always flabbergasted that there's no alignment between sales and marketing about what even the definition of a lead is, or exactly what the numbers look like to actually hit the revenue that people are hoping to achieve. The other thing we've studied very closely for the last few years is marketing automation and how those systems work in conjunction with CRM to track and measure results. And then what's the 5th ingredient you need? Well, it might sound a little self-serving, but you need a marketing copilot or a StoryBrand guide who's going to help provide consistency and execution, and consistency around that message and execution that leads to really good results. So I'm going to turn it over to Charles now, who's going to start by taking you through the StoryBrand framework. And for those of you on the call today who've been part of the Marketing Copilot community for a long time, you're in for a treat. I highly, highly recommend this if you're out there struggling with content right now. So take it away, Charles.
I certainly will, and thank you very much for that. Let's start off with some of the sort of the business communication stuff. Forbes has done a lot of work in this, and Harvard Business Review. Messaging delivered a story is 22 times more memorable than really anything else. And we'll get a little bit into sort of the brain functions and the neurological aspect of all of that. So here's Forbes. At its core, storytelling refers to the art of crafting narratives that capture the essence of your brand and appeal to your audience. And it involves communicating narratives in a way that are both relatable and memorable. So think about this in terms of the sales and marketing. Storytelling tends to go beyond the features and benefits framework of your product and service. It goes deeper into the emotional and psychological aspects of the audience's decision-making process. So things in that resonate for me, particularly because this is really a framework that takes what I'll talk about in a little bit, which is the hero's journey. That's the 7-step marketing framework, the 7 touch points of any great story, and brings it into what's going to basically drive all of the messaging. And when Marie talks about the value proposition, yeah, it's a question of, I think, what's the problem that we're solving? How do we break through the noise? 5,000 marketing messages coming at us every single day. What is it that's going to kind of have us leap forward ahead of all of that? And when we get to what we call heroes and guides, how are we going to break through so that people say, yeah, why should I choose you? Lots of choices out there. Lots of opportunities, to really say this is the compelling reason, the compelling value proposition. So a bit of background. Donald Miller, interestingly, his origin story was that he was a novelist and a screenwriter who about 10 years or so ago was invited by Accenture in Los Angeles to come and be their chief storytelling officer. And he quickly realized, of course, that's where things are going in terms of business communication. And he wrote a book, that first one there, called Building a Story Brand, which is reached the million copy purchase and read, and he's doing a new edition, and from there started building a story brand business. Obviously some of those what we call the brag bar down there with some fairly high-profile clients. And then about 7 years ago, realized that they were simply so busy that they licensed and certified their framework. And we now have about 600 StoryBrand guides around the world, a few in Canada, lots in the States. And I became one 3 years ago, and that's me standing in a theater, because I built a few theaters as well, and bringing what I think is the marrying of the processes of theater, crafting stories, putting them on their feet, if you like, and then sending them out to audiences as an exact parallel for what we do in StoryBrand. So how can we stand out in a noisy and crowded marketplace? How do we solve that problem? Here's the first thing that we know this instinctively. We know that, I mean, I'm old enough to know about, Sony and Beta VHS. The best products and services don't win. The products and services that most clearly communicate the problem they solve win. So that's going to be a bit of a paradigm shift, I think, for some. And we want to talk about why that is through the 7 steps of the StoryBrand marketing framework. So we're wired for stories. It's what we gather from our earliest days. And how does a story work in terms of communicating and reaching those emotional connections, that emotional core? Because what I just want to preface this with is the fact that, again, neurologically speaking, our brain only has 2 functions, really. And one is the messaging that I'm seeing helping me to survive and better thrive? Does it solve a problem? Does it make my life better? Or secondly, we go into what we call conserving calories, which is why, again, another Donald Miller fun fact is that we actually spend 30% of our waking hours daydreaming, because of course what's in front of us has failed to show us how we can survive and thrive. And again, in the very fast-paced world of marketing and messaging, we actually, when you think about engagement with a website, with any marketing message, we've got about 5 to 8 seconds to answer what we call the caveman test, which is, what's the offer? What's in terms of my problem? What's the solution to that? And how does my life look better? That's how we engage. So first paradigm shift is, I'd say 99% of all businesses talk about themselves. Let me tell you about my company. What's my brand story? And I'm here to tell you that nobody cares. What we need to do, first of all, is think about our buyer, first of all. Our buyer as the character, the hero of the story. Because what we're going to do is, when we agitate that customer desire, now they've got a reason to enter into the story the brand is telling, because they can identify with the aspiration, and they can also identify with the problem. But let's be clear here. We often say in StoryBrand, if you confuse, you lose. Your character really can only have one aspiration. Don't get too clever with it. So when we take the Bourne identity, Matt Damon is Jason Bourne. He won't stop until he knows who he is. Now, the temptation is to say, well, hey, let's pad this out a little bit. But also not until he adopts a cat, right? Or marries the girl, or even masters the tango. Now, I haven't seen Matt Damon tango, but maybe we want to. But the point is that what we've got to do is saying, Jason Bourne has a problem. He's our character. He has an aspiration, which is that he needs to find out who he is. That's clear. But he also has a problem. What's preventing him from getting where he wants to go? So what we need to do while we marry aspiration is also agitate the problem, because they really need to pay attention to our brand if we've got that relationship going between aspirational identity, what success looks like, and what are the things that are preventing them from getting from point A, where they know where they are, suffering a problem, to point B, which is where they want to be.
And can I just jump in for a second here, Charles, and say, for everybody on the call today, I think the most simple way to visualize this is if you look at your own website, the homepage of your own website. And I've built hundreds of websites, and I can't tell you how often I've made this mistake. So I've said I'm Jason Bourne, and now I want to put in the top navigation that I've adopted a cat and that I've mastered the tango and that I've done whatever. And it isn't till 5 pages into the website that I've really said, here's the problem we solve and who's we solve it for. And every CEO I've worked with has always wanted to, I used to call it, I know this is a graphic term, but throwing up on the home page. Let's just throw everything we can up there. So for those on the call today, if you're struggling with, one of those tasks being improving conversion on your website, this is such a great exercise because you start to strip away all the things that don't matter to get down to the nut of it. So sorry, I just needed to make that point because I think
and thank you for
really
that, because absolutely. And I think another of the paradigm shifts is that don't start by talking about, everyone, who are we, et cetera, et cetera. What you really want to do in that 5 seconds is show them the ends, right? What's the outcome? What does success look like? We often talk about happy, smiling people, right? And don't talk about the means to the end until you've firmly established what that end is, right? And I think that's really what you're saying. So here's the second paradigm shift, which is that your customer is the hero of the story, not your brand. Think about this. Heroes in heroes' journeys are actually fundamentally weak because they don't know how to get to where they want to go. The guide, which is you, in relation to your customers, are strong. You've been there, you've got the experience, you're going to use an authority statement at some point to talk about how you've solved this problem for countless people, just like the next viewer and the next hero of the story. So that's really important. Who gives them a plan, and the plan is going to be, again, there might be 18 steps to what you do. But what we've got to do is that, again, brain function, we can really only handle about 3 steps, maybe 4. So if, for instance, you're in a services business, it's pretty much going to be number 1. What do we all do first? There's a consultation, a diagnosis, an assessment, a something or other. And then as service providers, and I'm assuming that most of the people here are business to business, we're then going to bring forward a proposal, a recommendation, a customized plan to solve that problem. And then 3 is essentially acceptance, acknowledgement, and sit back and relax, customer and client, because we're going to move things forward so that you can enjoy the fruits of success. So easy planning. Calls to action. Here's another fun fact to add to Marie's stakes slide, which is that 70% of all websites in the United States do not have a clear call to action. A clear call to action is not learn more or find out more.
Or call us.
Or call us, right? Yeah, absolutely. What you want to do if you're in business to business, is to say, book a call, so that you can then take them specifically to a calendar page or something or other and actually have them make a commitment. It puts you in control of the process because you're now obviously controlling when it is that you devote those 20-minute, 15-minute, no obligation time sections. And if you're in products, it's basically buy now. So you're actually requesting an actual commitment from the customer, the client, rather than just leaving it. And so, don't do contact forms, don't do call us, don't do send us an email, have them actually book in. And you will be in the top 30% of all websites just by doing that. So people, people want to be called to action. And unless we clearly call people to take action, they won't do it. They'll swipe right. So then what we want to do is show them the 2 things. What having done all of that, having worked with us, they want us to cast a vision of what their lives can look like if they use our products and services. So what are the success factors? But we also need to agitate, what happens if they don't work with us? What if you just say, okay, what I call in business, in my business coaching days, we would call it the cost of inaction. What happens if I just don't do anything about my problem? A great thing from the theater world, when we're talking about, Act 1, the exposition. Who's the hero? Who's the villain? What's the situation? What do they want in terms of their aspiration and their goals? What's getting in the way? But the story has to have conflict, right? There's got to be a tension between what you want and what's preventing you from getting there, whether that's a person or a situation. So we've got to gear this thing up into action. a rising tension. So that's what we call the inciting incident. And basically, we've got to, sometimes I think what we have to do in sales and marketing is very clearly create the inciting incident. What happens if you don't do anything about this? So urgency, probably more in, closing the sale, but there've got to be negative consequences of the cost of inaction. So how we do all of this, just to run through this to summarize, is what do our customers want? Clear, objective, and animate that goal, that aspiration. What's the problem that the customer is experiencing to prevent them from getting there? Now we can position the brand as the guide to the hero to give them the plan to call them to success. Have we created a clear plan? Is the call to action clear? And are we explaining what their life will look like if they do business with you? Success. And have we explained the negative consequences of not doing business with you? Now, Marie's been through this process. What we do is we create what we call a brand script. So here, just again, repetition is a good thing. The character, what do they want? And we do a kind of bullet point session together. And then what are the problems? The external problem is usually very easy to identify, budget, whatever those external things are that are preventing them from getting what they want. The internal is interesting because that's where we go into the emotional cost of not getting to where they want to go. So are they frustrated? Are they fearful? Are they confused? Are they overwhelmed by not being able to get to where they want to go? The philosophical is really a statement that says it's just plain wrong for you to fill in the blank, continue with this, and that's why you deserve. And we point back to the goal, the aspiration. And sometimes it can be a villain as well. Who's the hero? Who's the villain? I once did a tax services lawyer. Clear villain on that one, the Canada Revenue Agency. And that's one of the fun parts. Is there actually a villain? So meets the guide who understands their fear. We have an empathy statement. We get you. We understand this. And the authority piece, which is here's how we have solved the problem for people just like you, just like the character. We give them a plan, 1, 2, 3, which we talked about a little bit earlier, clearly calling them to action, and then clearly outlining, okay, once we work together, these are the actual results that you're going to get in success. And these are, I think it says tragic results there, or tragic consequences that you're going to avoid. So that's a process that really works when we do that together. What we then do, and this is really the first real deliverable in this StoryBrand framework, is what I call a brand narrative playbook, or maybe a brand messaging playbook. And you can see there's a type content page there: aspirational identity, successes, problems, stakes, guide, plan, etc., etc. And what you've actually created in this brand narrative is now in real language and complete sentences, the foundation for all that brand messaging. So what you're doing is brand messaging in this process, brand positioning. You're cutting through the noise. You're working from the idea of the customer as hero, and you're doing brand positioning. You're answering the "why should I choose you" question. And that's the foundation for everything that Marie's going to talk about.
Thanks, Charles. And I really do want to stress that, we've gone through this process at Marketing Copilot. And the reason I found it so useful is that now you know how to fill in the blanks when you go to build the things that we're about to we're going to talk to you about now. You're really able to fill those blanks in a very compelling way. And you're not sitting around coming up with a bunch of tactics and saying to a copywriter, hey, can you go write some copy about this, when it doesn't really bring all those elements to bear. So we developed the Marketing Copilot growth formula, which is something that we came up with back in January, after I said about 24 months of studying this. Now, I always joke about the fact that I went into marketing because I was told there'd be no math. And I always used to say to people, don't give me math, and then found out really quickly that marketing was all about math. And it was very much, if you're going to track results and do measurements correctly, there was a lot of things you needed to be doing. So we came up with this formula. 1B times the sum of 3T times 3A plus 3P plus 3I plus 3E, the sum of 3P plus 3I plus 3E. And that should equal increased revenue for your business. But what exactly does this mean? All right, this is a fancy way of showing people how we built this. And the reason we did this is because I found that in the last few years, marketing execution has often been around a slew of tactics that were very much separate from each other. And what we were trying to do was hit vanity metrics. If I did PPC advertising, pay-per-click advertising, I could spend or send more volume to my website. But volume doesn't really matter if the quality of the traffic is no good when it gets there, or if there's no conversion strategy. It's like inviting people to a party and having the front door locked when they arrive because there's really nothing for them to do and they can't enter. So we wanted to show this formula to bring tactics together, but show how they work in conjunction with each other and show what the real numbers are you should be looking towards. So let's break down 1B times the sum of 3T times 3A. And what exactly does that mean? So that's one documented buyer persona. And that's where Charles was saying the hero of your story is not you and your brand, it's the customer. And that's where you're saying, what's their aspiration? What's their goal? And we call it a buyer persona. We talk about buyer persona guides. We have a workbook where you can start to do this. But, this is where your story brand becomes so important because now you've documented this. A buyer persona is not an industry category, demographic, or even a job title. It's a precise articulation of problems, success factors, and obstacles your buyer is challenged with making a purchasing decision. And that's what Charles was showing you. That guide has a problem and he has an aspiration of what he's trying to solve. That's how we want to get that documented buyer persona together. Now, let's just say, for example, we were trying to sell to the director of IT. Let's just say we're a managed service provider who sells IT services. I'm sure we can all relate to that. And the director of IT is either trying to upgrade old systems, create a footprint for growth for the business, or excuse me, in this day and age, everybody's trying to improve their data management strategy. So we know that that person has a problem. And you might even want to do a story brand for each one of these problems because it might be different depending on where that person is trying to get to. 3T are 3 buying triggers. Triggers that bring them to want to start to solve the problem. What you do does not matter to prospects, but the problems you are solving does. So let's say this director of IT wants to eliminate manual processes within their organization, wants to create a self-serve customer-facing portal for customers, and wants to find new revenue streams. So now we have those triggers that we can use. And 3A is attributable touch points. Sadly, today, when I talked about that 21 to 30 touches before we start to get any kind of engagement, the other number we work really hard against as marketers is the fact that 83% of the buyer journey is happening online, and it's oftentimes not attributable. This is what creates such a challenge for us. Only 17% of that buyer activity is actually something we can track and measure. So this is where we want to make sure that those numbers, again, we're coming back to our math. We want to make sure those numbers are so clear and concise. So let's just say we put a targeted message on LinkedIn. That might drive clicks to a website. That is probably more compelling than just knowing we had 250 impressions on our LinkedIn post. Because without having taken a next step or doing something, we know the eyeballs are scrolling the LinkedIn feed, but they're not necessarily doing anything with it. So we want those attributable touch points. Maybe we trigger an offer on a website, or maybe we track a level of engagement in a subsequent workflow. These are all places where we can start to add attribution, and we need to be very aware of these things and focus on the right things, not vanity metrics. 250 impressions on LinkedIn means nothing if nobody did anything with that information. The next thing is we want to visualize this, and we've put this together, and we're going to give you this in a booklet today so that you can go and take it down, but write it down for yourselves. But that's where you've now brought back some of the StoryBrand stuff into the documented buyer persona. And you're starting to be very clear on the buying triggers and what some of those attributable touch points might be based on the activity that you want to execute. And that's where you start to really map it out in this way, because without sort of seeing how all these things work together, we oftentimes pursue the wrong things. One of the things that I've gotten quite frustrated about in the last couple of years is the fact that we're still putting so much emphasis on SEO. And SEO is something that I think is going to go the way of the dodo bird, quite frankly, especially now with AI and Chat GPT. And just thinking getting on page one is going to get us more customers is a falsehood for many companies. Now, if you're a business to consumer company on the line today, and for example, you run a dental practice in a local community, it still could be a very good way for you to gain business. It still could be very useful in that local search that you come up near the top of the page. But for most of us, just getting on page one when we don't even know really what the compelling keywords are people are using becomes something we chase without a lot of return on investment. So this really helps us visualize where our return on investment is going to be. Now, the next part of the formula that I want to leap into is the 3P plus 3I plus 3E. We like to see 3 partners to co-market with. And even if you are that local dental practice, maybe you have 3 chiropractors who are very good at sending business when people experience dental problems or neck issues. If you are a IT company, you might want to partner up with systems integrators in your community, but there's always 3 really good partners that you can co-market with. Today's a great example of us working together, Charles and I working together, and he's got an audience that needs one thing, I've got an audience that needs another, and we've put the 2 things together to create value.
Absolutely.
So create content with those subject matters, share the lists, and create broader networks for both companies. The other thing that's really important is influencers. And whether you're a B2C company or a B2B company, these influencers matter. These are the people who are getting lots of coverage on LinkedIn. They're getting lots of coverage in the places where your customers are. And maybe if you are a consumer product, maybe that's Instagram, maybe that's Facebook. But you want to be where they are, and you don't want to waste time and money on places where they aren't. We do all of our work exclusively with B2B companies, and we always tell them that Facebook and Instagram are likely not going to be good channels, but LinkedIn and building LinkedIn authority is likely where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. So you want to know who those company influencers are, and you want to have good relationships with them. And then 3 events. That might be a webinar, a conference, a podcast. It could be lots of different things. But when you start to schedule those and you know then what's driving traffic and you know where you're getting engagement, and now you have an opportunity to talk to people. So when we add it all together, we're adding 1B times the sum of 3T times 3A plus the sum of 3P plus 3I plus 3E. So here's the map you're going to create. Now, it might feel a little overwhelming, but trust me, when you start to map this out and you start to use some of the elements of StoryBrand, it becomes very visual and very powerful. This is what you would do for a single buyer persona. If you had many buyer personas, you'd want to do multiple ones of these. So you want to make sure you've got those partners to co-market, company influencers, events where you're going to be seen and be seen, and then you've got those buying triggers so that you can draw people in, those things that people care about. I often get asked the question, how long does this take to pay off? This seems like a lot of work. Well, Charles, what does it normally take to put a story brand together for something? Help the audience understand what the level of effort is there.
I would say that I like to do client success stories into that brand scripting, bullety kind of thing, and then into creating the brand message playbook, 10 days to 2 weeks.
Lovely. Okay. So there you have it. And there's some good worksheets there that StoryBrand provides. And I have to give a shout out to Donald Miller and his books. I've read them. They're fantastic. They're very helpful. Now for us, we start to then use that information from the StoryBrand and we start to build out your formula. And once you start to execute, I think 90 days into execution, you'll understand the velocity of your value proposition, the velocity of the story you're bringing to the marketplace. Are people connecting with it or not? And if they aren't, you need to go back and fine tune that StoryBrand. You have to go back and fine tune those buying triggers. 180 days into your program, you'll be measuring sales qualified leads. Remember, I said you need to have that marketing automation system in order to track and measure. And you definitely, within 180 days, will see this. And in 360 days, your program should be measuring revenue. So that's the investment that you have to make. It is hard work. It is heavy lifting. But if this was easy, everybody'd be doing it. And there are no silver bullets anymore. You just thinking that throwing money at PPC is going to help us win is really not the way it goes. So remember, we said for any recipe to work, you need the right ingredients. You need that compelling value proposition, that compelling story, that compelling narrative that you're going to build. You need those documented personas, what they care about, what's their problem, how are you going to help them solve the problem, how are you going to guide them? And you need a marketing automation tool that aligns with your CRM so that you know exactly what's happening and you're not just tracking things like vanity metrics. You want to be able to see how often did they engage with an email workflow? How often were they on your website? When you sent out the last round of posts, did people pay attention? Because we don't want to do activity for the sake of doing activity. We want activity that supports our sales team and supports revenue. And that's the way we all win. So I'm going to just sort of wrap this section, and then Charles has a fabulous offer for you, and we have the guide for you to download, as I mentioned. But why is this so important in 2024? Well, as I said at the top of the hour, competitive advantage in the marketplace is severely diminished. I can't remember the last time I actually saw something unique and different that was being launched in the marketplace that nobody had done before. Technology is great, but now it just creates a twist on everything. And I'm sure you'll appreciate this, Charles, but I always used to say Hollywood never came up with any new ideas either. They were just recycling the same movies over and over again.
There's a book called There Are Only 6 Actual Plots in the Universe, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so, it does take a lot to stand out today. More time, money, and resources need to be put into lead generation and lead management. We have a whole other presentation that we do on how the lead generation and management process has been moved into the marketing function. And that if you're not embracing that as a marketer, your days could be numbered. You have to be part of the sales team and the sales process these days. And companies that aren't working hard at this aren't going to survive. It is an incredibly competitive world out there. And we all need to be doing this. So every person managing or running B2B marketing in 2024 needs dashboards. They need to be able to understand their funnel at any given time and gauge ability to measure high intent purchases, because this is what justifies marketing. It allows you to understand how much to spend. And this is even where you can bring it right back and show the power of doing a story brand and why that story is actually driving business and more compelling. For those people on the call today, please snap this QR code with your phone. Get your phone out, snap the code. This is where you're going to get the complete growth formula with worksheets. We even have our playbook in there that shows what some of the tactics are that you might want to use. And there's a lot of goodies in there that I think will really help you get your formula together. What have you got for people today, Charles?
Great. Well, I just want to say a big shout out to you because, and to let people know, in fact, this is how we met, was that we were in a marketing workshop together last year. And I really, as I listened to Marie talking about the growth formula, it just seems to me that when you think about those three things, value proposition, buyer persona, and the growth formula, the trackable, workable formula, just seems to me to be so neat in terms of dovetailing, something that's absolutely, cutting through the noise in terms of basic messaging, but then, immensely applicable. And I've learned so much from you. So what happens is that once a quarter or so, there's a live stream marketing workshop. It's about 5 hours per day over 2 days. So it's not kind of, taking you away completely from your usual day, but it's live stream from Nashville. You see there Don Miller on the left, and Dr. JJ Peterson, who's in communications PhD and all that kind of stuff. It's a 2-day workshop to create a clear message, get a 5-part marketing plan for your business in terms of the sales and marketing funnel at the marketing workshop, streaming the curriculum from them, and then going into a small group for live virtual coaching from me, and knowing that you're doing it right there. So access to live keynotes. There's a QR code there, which will take you to a landing page with lots more information and a video from Don Miller. The virtual coaching sessions, digital workbooks, and a brand script. You can see the 7-part framework over there, which you'll have, and the replay sent to your inbox after the event completion. So what I'm actually at the moment in the process of doing is putting together that cohort for May the 7th and 8th. So take a look at the landing page, QR code there, and let me know if that's something that's of interest to you. Thanks, Marie.
Thanks. And yeah, I've participated in those, and they were hugely valuable. I loved it. And I don't have a big attention span these days. And
well, that's a good thing, because in fact nobody has a big attention span these days, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
and the time just flew by, and I got so much out of it. So I really have to say it was a real game changer for us, and I was really glad to participate. We're happy to bring this presentation to your organization. If you have senior management or people on your sales and marketing leadership team that you want to convince this is the way to go, please connect with Charles and I. There's our email addresses there, and we're happy to come and talk to people. Sometimes it's hard when you're an internal person at a company to kind of get your voice heard around what needs to happen. So sometimes a third party is a great resource to help you move things in the direction that you want. We really want to thank you for being online, but I know that we do have a few questions, and we're going to take some questions right now. So if you would like to pose a question, please pop it into the chat. And I know the first one we have, which I think is a great one for you, Charles. I'm interested in the StoryBrand live stream, but I can't make it May 7th and 8th. What do you suggest?
I'd suggest actually just, making that LinkedIn connection with me and sending me an email, because obviously that brand scripting process is something that we can do one-to-one, or, directly if there's a team at your company to go in directly and do it that way. So it can be a 1-2 punch, and it can happen, more at your convenience if those dates don't work. Thanks.
Great. Okay.
I want to know what Shelley was having a laugh about.
Oh, she was having a laugh about, I think Shelley was having a laugh about, I was told thered be no math. I think that's when that popped up.
Right.
Yes. And I'm sure Shelley can relate that I hate it when there's math on something. The other question we have is, why do you suggest you need marketing automation? Can't your CRM do the same thing? Thank you for asking that question. What's interesting is the way I look at it is a customer relationship management system is really a good tool when your sales team knows the leads that they're following up on, and they know who people are. But if 83% of the buyer journey is happening out there and you don't know who they are, you have to find ways to bring them into your organization and secure an email address. And that's what a good marketing automation system should be doing for you. It's finding people and tracking people that you don't know, so you can try to turn them into a sales qualified lead and then make them known within your CRM. But marketing automation needs to happen at the front end. And don't just get your IT department or people in your company to get a glorified email marketing system in front of your CRM. You need more than that. You need to know so much more. You need to know touch points and those attributable touch points that we talked about. And a lot of email marketing systems aren't doing that today. That's where you'll need something more sophisticated to really start to see if you're driving revenue.
And just to add to that, just and again, part of the it's not there on the brand script, but in fact, it's not just a direct call to action, the book your call that you need on your website, but you also need a lead magnet, so that you can add value. The 5 tips and tricks that for the people who have different buyer styles, right? You've got fast decision makers and slow decision makers. And some people will just scroll down and need that lead magnet, the ebook, the questionnaire, the video to capture an email and get them into that CRM email nurture.
That's absolutely right. Douglas on the call has said he couldn't take notes quickly enough. So I'm going to take that as a huge compliment. Thank you, Douglas. And yes, everybody will be receiving a recorded version of this after the webinar today. You'll get a link to the recorded version so you can go through it. Another question we have is, how do we apply a brand messaging playbook to our marketing strategy?
Very quickly, just there's a really a kind of what we call the stack. So once you've got that brand messaging playbook, we're then going to create what we call your company one-liner. And it's the thing that you kind of stick on your forehead and on the wall in reception, and everybody knows that what's the problem that your customer has, what's your plan to solve it, and how much better is their life after that happens. So it's a 1, 2, 3. Then we start applying all of that now marketing messaging into wireframing a website, or creating that lead generator magnet if it's an ebook or something like that, or a video script. And I could actually send you all a great example of how a brand messaging became an actual script for a 1-minute video for a design company, a home design company. And then, okay, once you've captured those email addresses, are you putting them into a nurture sequence, which is obviously long-term, to solve the problem of people not being necessarily ready to buy when you want them to buy, but 6 months, 9 months down the road, you're top of mind, or into an immediate sales sequence of 5 to 6 sales emails. So there's what we call that stack of one-liner, website, lead generator, nurture, sales sequences.
Absolutely. Now, I think Montana from our office is on the call. Montana, could you put in the chat for everybody the link to what's my value prop on the Marketing Copilot website? Because this next question is, why is value proposition and messaging so important today? Why is it so important to have this story? And the fact of the matter is, if people don't have a reason to choose you, they won't. It's as simple as that. If they don't have a compelling reason that speaks to them, they won't. And you don't, as Charles mentioned, have probably more than 5 seconds to make that comment to them. We've built a tool at Marketing Copilot. It's one of the reasons we've been recognized as an MVP by Microsoft in the AI area. We've built a tool called whatsmyvalueprop.com. And if you go to the Marketing Copilot website, marketingcopilot.com, and you click on the button called Marketing Copilot AI, and Montana has just put that link in the chat for everybody, you can put your company URL into the tool. And that's all you need is your website address. And it will return through prompts that we've built in the back. It'll return what the world is seeing when they hit the homepage of your website. In some cases, it's kind of depressing. I'm not going to lie to you. I ran a session last year down in Florida for Microsoft, with Microsoft. And I had 60 people in the room, they all started using the tool, including Microsoft. And 3 people from Microsoft said, this is our value proposition. This is horrible. And agreed that what the world was seeing was not very helpful and useful. So that's why we built that AI tool. It helps you understand what the world is seeing. And then allows you as a marketer to clean that up. And stay strong, everyone on the call today who is responsible for what goes on the homepage. Stay strong. Don't back down when people say we need 50,000 different messages on the website. You don't. You need one message that's compelling to your buyer that says how you're going to help them and what is going to happen if they choose you. And everything else should be removed. I mean, we went through an era of putting all of our social media icons in the top right-hand corner. Top right-hand corner is the most important conversion point on your website. And if all you want them to do is follow you on social media, which they're not going to do, because why would they do that yet? They don't know if they even like you yet or what you're going to help them with. That you've just used up a very important spot in your conversion strategy, and you don't want that. So now, you see everybody's moved that stuff to the bottom. The about us even goes into the footer. Donald Miller calls it the junk drawer, which I love, but then it's, it's maybe not fair to some of that information that's important. But if you do join the live stream, they show you how to apply StoryBrand directly to your homepage, and it's so useful. So useful. It's worth its money right there. So do we have any other questions? If we don't have any more questions, we're going to give you back time in your day. I love to do that. It's kind of the biggest bonus, in my opinion. You get some time back. Thank you, everyone, for being on the call.
Thank you. Thank you, Marie. And I just want to say to everybody, I think one of the I hope one of the other things you've got from this, quite apart from sort of content and food for thought, is that this can actually be a fun process as well as a valuable and lucrative process. The sort of the deep dive is very much when we talk about storytelling and then talking about how we're applying it, we're getting into the fun stuff. Becoming a storyteller is actually very rewarding, and I urge you to think about that.
Well, if you ever wanted to spend time in Hollywood, this is the way to do it, no matter what company you work for and who you sell to. This is how you create a compelling story. So thank you, Charles. Thanks to everyone on the call today. Do look out for an email in your inbox with a link to the recording if you want to rewatch it and catch up on some of those things that you didn't quite jot down. But please download the guide, think about attending a workshop, and happy marketing, everyone.
Absolutely. Cut through the noise.
Stay strong out there.